I think we're one of the few shows that does it formal like this, Emily, maybe because I'm old school and also because I see that's the way TV does it, and I respect you guys as fighters so tremendously. So here's how we do it. Ladies and gentlemen, super to have grateful to have this next guest on the show for the first time, joining in numerous other champions, top contenders, and amazing fighters. She is coming to the UFC with a big fight on July 16th against Jessica Penne. We're talking about Emily Dacotte. Welcome to the show, Emily.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So I'm excited to have you on. I've actually been following your career for a little bit. A lot of people may say that, but you'll find I'm someone that really means it. And how I can prove that, because a lot of people won't remember miscellaneous stuff like this. I was watching your fight with a girl that had some hype. I think it was about 5 years ago, and both of you only had a few fights, but she had some hype. And it was in Bellator, and there we go. My producer is going to help me pick it out. Go down. I think it was 2017. Even lower. And where is it? No. And it was before that. There we go. It was 2016, almost 6 years ago. And the opponent was Bruna Vargas. And I believe your grandmother was there watching that live, because you and your grandma would always watch fights, and she was there screaming, "Come on, Emily! Come on, Emily!" And I remember,
yes.
And I remember I saw that. I said, "Man, that is so cool. This girl's grandma is there cheering," and I'm like, I really hope she wins. But they were talking up your opponent. They were really like, this Bruna Vargas is like got all kinds of fire, all kinds of shine, and then you came in there and smashed her. And I was like, I was happy because your grandmother was happy. Right? Because I love my grandparents. They're gone now, but I love them. I love them so much. And B, just it was so cool to see. But how was that memory? I'm sure you remember that. That must have been a really cool moment, because that was your first Bellator fight, like your first televised fight, wasn't it?
Yes, that was definitely one of my favorite moments, actually, of my career. My grandma is wild. She's a feisty woman, let me tell you. She's just like so feisty. She just does whatever she wants. Nice. She wants, always supporting whatever I want to do. And just happens that we're just like kind of into the same things. Like as I was a kid, we watched the fights together. My grandpa also, but he's more calm. Right. My grandma's just like really wild. And so we watched the fights as a kid, and then she's just got involved in my martial arts as a kid, and then my wrestling in high school, and like very briefly in college. But as soon as I started training MMA, she was just pumped. And so she came out for my Bellator debut, and it was perfect that I was able to, get the finish and have her there. And they actually brought her in the cage. I didn't know that they were going to do that, but
wow.
I turned around and she was like in the cage, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever.
That's so cool. What a great memory.
It's one of my favorites for sure. And especially, like you said, they were really talking up that opponent. I wasn't even signed with Bellator then.
Wow.
She was signed, and I was signed to like a 1-fight deal. And so after that is when they offered me like an actual contract, and I signed with them and fought with them eight times, and really enjoyed my time there. Learned a lot of lessons, learned a lot about myself and the sport. And so definitely bringing back that first fight memory, that was awesome.
Absolutely. Well, I was just telling my producer that I think you're in a really good position, and I'm sure everyone wishes they got to the UFC when they were 23 or 25, but most people don't, and a lot of the people do end up kind of imploding. They don't explode in a good way. They just fall apart and start blowing up from the inside out when they start losing and can't handle the pressure. And so I was looking at all the people you fought. So I was telling my producer that any of the women that are not in the UFC that are badasses and can fight, you fought them pretty much. Right?
Right.
And so I was thinking I was going to look down and, when I looked at your stats, that you were like 32 or 31 or something. I'm like, damn. 28, that's like so perfect, because you're still really young, but you have all that experience and seasoning.
Right. Me and my coach are very similar. So we always, like, whenever they offered a fight, and even if it was somebody that like I knew was going to be like a really difficult fight, I was like, we just looked at each other. We were like, well, let's go. Like, I was never really scared to lose. And now looking back, you know, obviously you need to have a decent record to get to where, you know, the high level. So that we kind of gambled with that, but you know, I just feel like I wanted to fight the very best, and that is why I'm here in the first place. So my whole career, whoever the best was, whoever they offered me, that's the fight that I wanted. Win, lose or draw, like I feel like I learned my best lessons or had my best fight against those best opponents, because it brings it out of you. And then, you know, even if you lost, you need to come back and level up. So I am very happy that me and my coach are so similar, that we always, you know, wanted those hard fights and wanted to challenge ourselves. And I feel like that's why I am exactly where I am right now, feeling so good in my fights, my more recent fights. And then, you know, of course, we just signed with the UFC. So I'm really thankful that I do have all that experience, and I'm still young enough to, you know, enter the UFC now and kind of start my UFC career.
Without a doubt. And let me ask you really quick. Sounds like your grandmother is still around, right?
Yes.
And so she will get to see, well, I'm sure you know, we can't count on our life tomorrow, but let's just say,
right,
barring a miracle, your grandmother will see your UFC debut. How excited is she about that?
She is pumped, but her first words were, "It's about damn time."
Right. Yeah.
I mean, like
I hear you.
Yeah. So,
but
it was.
Go ahead.
It was so important to me for my grandparents to see me fight in the UFC, because I mean, they kind of created the dream almost for me. Like, we watched the UFC fights together, and my grandparents were like, "You're gonna be there," like just so confident and like relaxed about it. They were just like, "You will be there. We're going to be watching you on the TV in the UFC." And I mean, this was like years and years ago. And so like to actually be here and have them watch it, it means a lot to me. And she is fired up. She's fired up.
Absolutely. And, you know, things all happen for a reason. We all have our story. And it's like, you know, the two of your last losses, in fact, I think, I may be wrong, that both of your two most recent losses were split decisions, fights that really you could have won. And I think we lost your video. And let me see.
Oops,
we got
sorry.
you back. Not a problem. No problem. So basically, I'm sure you were probably thinking that maybe had one or both of those decisions gone your way, UFC might have called you earlier. But you know, things happen for a reason, and I get a good feeling. Like, and I was just also telling a producer here that when someone is in the UFC that's like under 26, I usually predict them to lose, because most of the time they do. I just find that 28, both women and men, are pretty much just starting their athletic prime, right? Because you're getting your full strength. You know, like for guys, I train jiu-jitsu. I'm a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, and they would say you got old man strength. I'm sure for women, maybe old woman strength, right? And
right.
You know, so you start to be able to have that muscle strength and maturity. So I think you're in a really good spot. Not only that, when something takes, you know, longer to earn and is harder, you know, is like forces you to work so hard and grind so hard and be patient. I think it's that much sweeter when you get it. You know what I mean?
Yes, that's very similar to how I felt about like my title fight, because I've fought for several titles, and my first two was unsuccessful, and my first Invicta fight was one of the split decisions that you were mentioning, and that was a really difficult thing. You know, split decisions are hard, especially when they're really, really close, and sometimes they're controversial and whatnot. So that was a hard fight for me to like move past.
Right.
I feel like I did really well, and then she went to the UFC after that. So that was like a hard pill to swallow. But I honestly feel like my last two fights are where I felt the best. So like now I feel like I'm really ready to be going to the UFC. You know, I feel like I've been ready for a while, but my last two fights specifically, I do feel like everything's really coming together. So, you know, kind of like you said, everything comes together at the right time. I feel like that certainly is how I'm feeling right now.
Absolutely. And that makes perfect sense to me. That's what I'm thinking. So it just seems like the timing is right, and you're your best you're probably the strongest you've ever been. and you're still super young. And because one thing I think a lot of people don't notice is maybe because the women's divisions haven't been around in the UFC as long as the men, a lot of women's divisions have the average age like a little bit older. Like I think there's so many women in the UFC that are over 30, a lot that are over 32, and a lot that are over 34, right? So at 28, you are still like way younger than a majority of the women there. And, you know, then I think some of the women that are 24, 25 just keep alternatingly losing, you know. So, yeah, no, I think this is killer. And I think you're going to be in a really good position. So tell us a little bit about your background. I've noticed you got that wrestling. And I noticed that women didn't really have a lot of opportunity for wrestling in college. But I guess, did you wrestle some in high school? Or where'd you get that wrestling that looks like you're pretty confident with?
So I'm from California. I'm currently living in Oklahoma City. So when I was in high school, I wrestled 3 years, went to college in Oklahoma City. So I moved from California to Oklahoma to wrestle. Mm-hmm. I did like a year and a half. And I just didn't like the whole college environment. Not so much about the wrestling, but more just like the school and just everything together, like the schedule. It wasn't clicking for me. And, so I decided I was going to move back to California. But before that, I, tried a few gyms and I found my coach. And like I said earlier, we're very similar in the way we view a lot of things. So he just made a lasting impression on me. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to stay here and I'm going to start training and I'm going to fight. And I have not looked back since. So he's been in my corner since my amateur debut and every single fight since.
Awesome. Who's your coach and what team are you on? Are there any recognizable names that you train, people that you train with?
So I'm at an American Top Team, Oklahoma City. So it's a branch of American Top Team, nice. But it's really small. Like there's no big names or anything like that. We've got a bunch of fighters. We've got a bunch of regular people, and it is the best team for me. Like I've been to many gyms. I've been to Coconut Creek. I've been to all those places, and I always just like to come back home. So for my camps, I always stay here, and I'll usually make a couple trips. I've got some girls that I like to go travel to. Sometimes they'll come here, and then I've got another Muay Thai coach that is friends with my coach in Florida, Daniel Mendez, that we work with. So I just alternate, but I always like to come back home to my home base. I feel like it's just perfect for me, the environment, the people. And then I get whatever training I need. If I need to go out and get some training with somebody, I'll go do that. Or if I need to get, a trip to Florida to train with my Muay Thai coach, we'll do that. But so I'm here. I don't know if I said his name. Giuliano Galuppi is the gym owner. He's actually my fiance as well. So cool. Pretty much just a gym lifestyle for us both.
Cool. Right on. So let's talk about your opponent, Jessica Penne. I don't know if you watched the Ultimate Fighter season that she was on. I think like every woman in the house got a UFC contract pretty much. It seems like a lot of them are still around, or they're like 34, 36, 39. She's really good jiu-jitsu player. She's long, she's lanky, but she is 39 years old. It's a matchup that I think is a pretty good matchup because I think Jessica Penne is tricky enough that no one's gonna like label her as a can or as a bum because she's old, because she's just won a couple fights in a row and she's slick and she could submit you if you're not really focused like that. But then I guess also it's not like necessarily fighting Carla Esparza or Rose Namajunas in your first fight either. How do you feel about what kind of a challenge Jessica presents, and kind of like what's your mindset going into that, as much as you want to share without sharing any secrets that you don't want to talk about?
Yeah, so I pretty much watch all high level shows, like all girls at the high level. So I'm very familiar with her. I've watched her come up through Invicta and make her way through the UFC. So I have seen her fights, and I do agree. I do think she is a heavy grappling style. Very technical, very good, obviously. But I expect nothing less. Like, I want to fight the best girls. So I am excited about this matchup because she's got so much experience. She's a technical fighter, which is something that I like. And, she's well-rounded. definitely wants to, hit the ground, but she is well-rounded. So I'm excited for the matchup.
Absolutely. And that would be a really good name to have on your resume, should you win that fight. I wonder, like, do coaches ever, and I know your coach is your fiance, so I'm sure he really wants you to win. I often wonder sometimes, because coaches really want to find a way to motivate you, and they don't really, I guess, want to put pressure on you. But, is there a thought maybe that, like, if you just absolutely beat the brakes off of Jessica Penne, that would be just such a great start in the UFC if you could just like literally smash her? Or does coaching, really not ever entertain that sort of thought?
He, like, luckily we've known each other for a long time, so he knows how I need to be, before a fight. So he doesn't really like say anything about like a very strict game plan, or like the exact way to finish it, or like go smash her. It's more like, we're going to do our stuff, we're going to do it to the best of our ability, and then we're going to fight. And for me, I just need to get myself in there and do the best that I can that day, and that's really all that I can do. I train my best, I train my hardest in camp, and then I go there and I do my best in the fight, and I just give myself the freedom to kind of be pressure free, and to see where the fight is, and to try to stay where I feel like I'm having more success in the fight. So but yeah, he knew we were going to get somebody experienced. Like, there was no way we were going to get someone like a debut or anything. My record is just, I have a lot of fights. So we knew we were going to get an experienced person, and we're looking forward to it.
Absolutely, because you fought so many great fighters, and you were fighting them when you were like 26, 24, 22. So, you definitely, I think, have that kind of calm. And that being the case, do you think the fact that you fought in so many televised fights, like I wouldn't be surprised if like 8 of your fights or 10 or something were televised with such high profile fighters, do you think that's gonna stop this UFC like adrenaline pump or dump where like the bright lights and everything is scaring you? Like, I have a feeling you're probably going to be pretty composed whether it's a UFC or not based on your experience.
Yeah, I think it will for sure help me. I am expecting it to be different, obviously, because it's it's a much larger scale. But I do feel like, because I've done Bellator and I've done Invicta, and they all have that very professional setup, and the cage and the lights and everything, I do feel like it's a advantage for me, instead of coming in just like off a small local show. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm thankful for that experience, and I do hope that it plays to my advantage. But yeah, it's going to be different, and I'm expecting that. But I think with my, I've learned so many lessons in the last several years just from all the places that I've been fighting. I feel really ready for it.
Gotcha. And a lot of people can look back at Jessica Penne and say maybe like 2014, 2015 might have been like her peak. And again, not that she can't fight now, but I often hear fighters say, you don't want to think you're going to get the worst Jessica Penne. I know you don't want that. But like, when a fighter says, I'm just going to imagine she's going to be the very best Jessica Penne she's ever been, but then you look at the statistics that say she's 39 years old, how is she going to be the absolute best Jessica Penne she's ever been? She's probably not going to be that. But when you kind of look at that and you realize that that she's probably not physically as strong as she used to be, she's probably doesn't have the recovery she used to have, and she's not as fast as she used to be. I guess you just got to not think of that at all and try to pretend like this is Jessica Penne in 2015, or do you kind of try to paint a realistic picture of her?
I honestly don't think about that much. I look at more like, is it a technical fighter? Is it more of like a brawler? And she's a technical fighter. So skill in my mind is higher on the level of like importance. So she's got skills, she's technical, and I'm expecting her to come out nonstop from bell to bell. So I'm ready for whatever Jessica Penne is there, and I do hope that it's the best one. And she's looked really good the last several fights, so I definitely do expect that, and I prepare for that, and I plan for that.
Yeah.
So
your jiu-jitsu, how good do you feel about your jiu-jitsu? I'm not saying Jessica Penne is a Damian Maia, because she isn't. But I know that a lot of guys would go up against Damian Maia, and their whole thought would be just stay off the ground no matter what. Just don't be on top of him, don't be under him, don't be on the ground with him. I don't think, like I said, Jessica Penne is not Damian Maia, but how's your thought about just being able to feel comfortable in the scrambles with her on the ground? Because obviously you're a mixed martial artist, but wrestling I think was your first background. Are you feeling like you're fine really wherever it goes?
More recently in my fights, I've just given myself kind of like not a strict game plan. Like we train very specific things the whole camp. We try to sharpen up my strengths and my weaknesses. So, but when I get in there, I don't want to like, oh, stay standing, stay standing, stay standing. Then what happens if it hits the ground? Then you kind of like freak out. So I don't say like, oh, we've got to stay standing. I feel confident everywhere. I feel like I'm well-rounded. I feel like I'm technical everywhere as well. So wherever it is, I'm going to try to take advantage and stay where I'm more successful. But by no means am I afraid to hit the ground or anything like that. So I'm just giving myself the freedom to get in there, feel it out, and see where I want to be.
Absolutely. And I think the fight card is in New York. Am I wrong?
It is New York.
Interesting. What experience do you have with New York? Any?
I don't have any. I think like when I was a kid, I may have taken a trip out somewhere around there, but not where we're going to be. So I really don't even know what to imagine, but it's New York. That's, everyone knows that. All you need to say is New York, and I'm excited to see how it is. And the lifestyle there is
absolutely
different.
And you're going to get there what, maybe 4 or 5 days in advance?
Yeah, next Tuesday.
And you've flown all around the country for your fights. Have you ever gone out of the country, or has it all been inside the U.S.?
All inside the U.S.
Okay.
As far as fights.
And the flights don't seem to bother you. Probably 4 or 5 hour flight, something like that.
Luckily, I'm pretty easy flyer.
Nice. There we go. Yeah, this should be good. So, who are some of the fighters that you admire, whether they're male or female fighters? Like, who did you think coming up was really exciting, or was there anyone that you kind of thought, hey, I kind of like that style, I like what they do? Who are some of the people that you respect, or whether they're in the game or not still?
A lot of the Invicta girls, like the older Invicta girls that have moved to UFC, like a lot of the girls from that went on the Tough Show from Invicta. Mm-hmm. I just feel like a lot of them, I grew up in the sport, not grew up as a kid, but like grew up in the sport watching, like Michelle Watterson, Tisha, Rose, a lot of those girls I loved watching, and I still love watching because they're fighting, and a lot of them are hitting their prime. Like Tisha looks fantastic. Carla is the champ. Rose is, I think, in my opinion, the highest level athlete. I'm super fond of Rose, more so because how she is outside the cage and how she is inside the cage. I just feel like you can't just be good inside the cage and then be like, an asshole out of the cage. So I really appreciate the fighters that take the lifestyle seriously and, have respect and discipline. And so Rose for me is that person. And I just really admire her for that.
Absolutely. Always like Rose. Well, I think with your wrestling, you're really going to be a great addition to the strawweight division, because since Tatiana Suarez went up, or is going up, but has been injured constantly, unfortunately, it's really kind of been mostly Carla with the wrestling and not really anyone else. So I think that, UFC probably really realized that they can't keep on denying you when they really don't have a lot of girls that have a really good wrestling game. And at 28, you're still young. So like, I'm excited. I think you can go in there and just take that wrestling grit and ground and pound the big sister the crap out of some of these girls.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm really excited to make my debut and kind of get it started.
Absolutely. And you've got time, so I'm sure you're patient. Do you have any sort of like a game plan charted out? Like some people say, look, I expect if I win 3 fights, I can start calling out some people that are ranked. Do you have any thoughts like that, or do you just, want to let it go, or, the way it goes? Or like, can we expect you to be calling out some girls, or telling, Dana White, come on, it's me next. Look at me. Can you see me?
Definitely not. I like to take things one fight at a time, and that's my game plan for being here as well. One fight at a time, one opponent at a time. And I feel like I'll always get offered a fight. So like after this fight, whoever he offers, that's a fight that I need to take. And that's just how my whole career has been. You know, I don't like to pick opponents or choose or say no, yes, no. Whoever's offered is the fight that I need to take, and that's the fight that I'll do.
I like that. And I know you're just getting your UFC break and you're going to be there for a good long time, but do you have any thoughts about like an end date? Like some people say they don't want to be fighting after 35. Some people say I certainly won't be fighting in my 40s. Do you ever think about that?
Right.
If so, what's your thought?
Definitely not my 40s.
Right.
I want to say, 35 ish, depending on how I feel, if I feel good or not. But yeah, I don't want to, when I'm done, I'm done. I don't want to like go past that point and like just try to stretch it out. So whenever I'm done, I'm done. But definitely 35 ish. Have goals outside of the cage as well. So, but I will take advantage, and as long as I can do it, I certainly will.
Makes sense. Were you surprised or happy, or did you have one way or another feeling when you saw Joanna retire, put her gloves down in the cage after she got caught with that spinning back fist by Weili Zhang?
Yeah, I'm not surprised just because she's so successful out of the cage as well, but definitely felt sad about that. She's super, super good, and I watched all of her fights probably 10 times. So she's somebody that I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed watching and studying and learning from. So that was sad, but everyone's got to do what they got to do. If it's her time to move on, then it's so hard. Like if you don't want to be fighting, like you can't be fighting. This is not something that you can do like half-assed. Like you've got to be in it. And I think she wants a family and she wants to pursue like other careers. So I think that's the right choice.
Absolutely. I mean, I was there in the press section when she fought Weili Zhang the first time. I felt she won that fight. And not only that, you saw that she was fighting even though her head was becoming one huge hematoma. I mean, that was insane. The fact that she could handle that kind of pain. And I remember after the fight, I was talking, it was my turn, or I was up talking to Dana White in the post-fight press conference, and I forgot how I phrased it, but I said, what would you say, something like, to people that feel that the wrong person was given the decision? And he said, well, I don't know. He said, how many people here felt Joanna won? And me and several people put our hands up. And I just, that was one that I felt bad about, because I felt, man, she fought so hard. I thought she just won, that she just edged Zhang. She sacrificed her head blown up like that for who knows how long. And I just felt like, damn, to give her the loss in that situation but she just, she's a beast. She didn't cry any crocodile tears or anything. But these close fights did you have the same feeling? Did you think Joanna won, or did you feel Weili, or did you feel that one could have been a draw?
I haven't watched it recently enough to speak on it, but I do remember it being like an amazing fight. So I would need to go back, but I certainly can understand in those super close, decisions. It's so hard. Like, I understand it's hard for the judges, but I do feel like we're seeing it all the time with these decisions, and it's just, it's crazy sometimes. Sometimes it's a close fight and it could go either way, but sometimes it's not, and it's just like, it's totally it affects the fighter completely. So it's crazy, those decisions so close like that.
Absolutely. So we're only going to keep you maybe 5 more minutes or so. But first, I'd like you to have a chance to shout out if the project that you're talking about, like projects and stuff that you have other interests in. I think you mentioned that when I was talking about you retiring or anything. Is there anything you want to shout out? Anything you're involved in now, or anything you want to plug? Feel free to go ahead.
I'm not involved in anything yet, but I do want to get involved in like the rescue world, dog rescue. Oklahoma's got such I don't want to say crisis, but it's almost a crisis.
Sure.
All these dogs and stuff, getting dumped, and the shelters are overflowing, and it's pretty sad. And I've got rescue pitties, and they're just my favorite thing in the world. So I do want to get involved something in the dog world after fighting, or at the same time, maybe a couple years down the line. Not sure exactly what, but I've got some dog training friends and I've got some rescue friends. And so down the line, I want to kind of line something up.
That's awesome. I respect that so much. At the end of every show, I shout out, among other things, for people to take care of their pets. you know, because that unconditional love is so amazing, and they really deserve that care and love.
Yes.
So yeah, from one animal person to another, I really respect you for that. Before I let you go, can I get your opinion on some upcoming women's fights?
Sure.
Awesome. Dr. Adam Roorda, my producer, if you can queue up those fight odds, and being that there isn't a certain website that is sponsoring us, we're not going to shout out any website's name like a lot of these other shows will do, but we're going to say it's the fight odds. There we go. Okay, so as far as women's fights this Saturday, there is an interesting one. Cynthia Calvillo against Nina Nunes, who used to be Nina Ansaroff. She is the partner of, you know, Amanda Nunes. That's kind of an interesting fight. They've got Cynthia Calvillo slightly favored. It's to me, that's like, I don't know which way to go on that. Can you give me some insight from your vantage point as being a professional fighter, what you think we're looking at there, and what you think might give one of them an advantage?
Yeah, that is a really interesting fight to decide. I think Nina's striking is really good, more so because she's got power. Like, I feel like she hurts girls when she lands. She's a really heavy hitter. But then, you know, the last fight, or the last two fights on the ground, she was having, you know, some trouble. So yeah. Cynthia Calvillo obviously is a grappler who wants to hit the ground and had some trouble striking in the last few fights. Albeit she was at 125, right, which is a huge difference. Right. So like a lot of people don't understand that, and I can speak on it because I was fighting 125 in Bellator, which is not my division at all.
Oh wow, that's right. I forgot about that.
It makes a difference. So I don't know if Cynthia, I don't know what she walks around at, but you know, 115 and 125, that's a difference. So yeah. She was fighting 125. Now she's dropping back down. I think that we'll see a better Cynthia. Hopefully the weight cut's not like a problem for her. And I know she's been working on her striking, you know, so I think she's going to look improved striking, and I think she's going to look to hit the ground. So I think it really comes down to Nina's wrestling, like if she stops the takedown and is able to keep it standing. So that's super close. I do want to favor Cynthia, but I also would not be surprised either way.
Yeah, makes sense. It is really close, but I appreciate that analysis. And then let me see if I can see if there's another women's card on this Saturday's UFC. Dr. Adam Roorda may be below that. Oh yeah, there we go. So here's this is a weird one to me, and I don't know why I'm saying weird, but it just seems like an unlikely matchup, but in a way, I almost feel like this is another matchup that someone might put their gloves on the ground at the end. You can tell me if you agree. We got Antonina Shevchenko, the sister of the Bullet, against Courtney Casey. And I have nothing but respect for both of them. They're such tough, rugged girls. Courtney Casey's been there for years. She's fought everyone. She has some good wins. She has several losses. Antonina Shevchenko came into the sport late. I think she was like 33 in her first UFC or fight or something. So she did come in when she was already a little bit past her prime, and she had some great moments and not so much lately. And so kind of an unusual match. What do you think of what this match means? Who might have the advantage, and if someone might put their gloves on the cage octagon floor at the end?
Right. I do think it's an interesting match. I think I have been a fan of Courtney for a while. I think she's really good, and she's just had like not great luck with decisions or matchups. But like, I thought in the very beginning her jiu-jitsu was like really good, and then her striking also, I do feel like she also has power. I think she started at 115 and then moved up to 125.
She spent a lot of time at 115, and
I think she's like really big for 115. So I think that's why she moved up, and I think is probably a good fit for her. She filled out, and I think she's a really good, tough 125 that's just had like not great luck with decisions. I think she's had like a lot of like split decisions that she thought she won. So that's just a bummer. But as far as matchups, like I think she's going to try to stand. Obviously, Antonina just lost via triangle by Andrea Lee. So she might try to hit the ground. I do think her grappling is much better than Antonina's. So But Antonina has to know that, right? I mean, she has
Yeah.
to know she's a striker that everyone's going to try to take down and finish on the ground. So hopefully, since her last fight, she's kind of improved either the wrestling or the grappling. But I do think maybe this favors Courtney.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. You know, one thing I've wondered, and it doesn't matter whether it's men or women's fighter, but since you're a women's fighter, what if you had a sister who was competing as well, and she started after you, and she kind of wasn't as good? Don't you almost feel like, couldn't you like help just will her to win? You know what I mean? Don't you feel like, just you feel like if she was losing, just couldn't you just put your toughness, your skill into her head and your confidence and just will her to win? I guess you really can't, can you?
It's such a hard thing. I think it depends on the type of person, like how they look. They look like they're like close, and like Shevchenko's are like helpful and whatever. But like you could have like a totally competitive family. Like I've seen that before also, where it's like they're almost competing against each other instead of helping.
Right.
So I feel like the two of them are helpful, and like, obviously she wants to see her sister win and be as successful as she is. So I think that's the case with them. I just think that she's not her sister. Like they're totally different fighters, totally different style. So, but that would be super difficult to have a sibling in the sport, but it just depends on the type of people they are.
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, one thing I'm sure is that with Valentina being very successful, she's probably not forcing her sister to go take a second job or anything like that, I would imagine.
Right.
So, so there's that. But okay, so then other than that, I think the last thought I have is the rematch, Juliana Pena and Amanda Nunes. So no one I know has a crystal ball, the old saying where you can look in and see the future, even fighters. But so many people that are not fighters are just baffled by this rematch. They're thinking, okay, was this a fluke? Amanda looked like she was out of gas in the second round. She looked like she was not prepared. She looked like the worst Amanda Nunes ever. So there's a lot of people embracing that, saying, okay, I can get Amanda at only like a 2.5 to 1 favorite. This is like the easiest money ever. Then you have the people that are saying that's complete crap. This is the first time someone stood up to her. Juliana Pena is known for being rugged. She's known for being really scrambly on the ground and really slippery and really strong. And if she beat her once, she can beat her again because she's in her head. What's your thought? I'd love to hear you break this down, and then we can let you get back to your night.
This is also one that I'm not sure. Like, I think you've seen Amanda like look really, really good, show up and look amazing in fights, and you've also seen her show up and not show up. So it really depends if Amanda shows up, like how seriously she's taking it. She changed gyms, she's doing other things. Like it depends. Like, is it her priority? Is she about to retire? Like, there's a lot more that goes into it other than just like the fight. However, I think she wants to get that win back, knowing that like, if you watched it, like that is not Amanda's best. She definitely didn't show up, gassed out or allowed Juliana to like bring her into a brawl instead of, fighting more technically. So I hope that she shows up more technically and does not engage in like an all out brawl and gas out, in the first round. It's 5 rounds. Like, so you need to, you can't go 100% in round 1, which is what I think happened. I think she allowed Juliana to kind of get in her head and she brought the brawl. Like she always does. Juliana, like, is a tough, gritty person, and that I think that brought out like a brawl in Amanda. So I'm hoping that Amanda fights a little bit more technically, picks shots and doesn't go so hard in the first round. But yeah, I also wouldn't be surprised because Juliana knows how to beat her. Push the pace, bring the fight, make her brawl. So I think it just depends. Amanda, did you go back and change what, the mistakes that happened, or are you just going to go out and say, oh, that was like not me, I'm going to show up this time? So I don't know. I'm leaning towards Amanda, but also wouldn't be surprised with Juliana. Like, rematches are crazy. It just depends on who learned what lesson in the fight.
Absolutely. Do you tend to watch like all the women's high-level women's fight out there, or all the women's and men's fights out there, or hardly ever? Like how much of a MMA fan are you as far as your viewing habit?
We watch, you know, I watch all girls, especially 115, 125. I just like to study and learn. Um, but I'll watch any girls fight any weight at the high level, Bellator, LFA, Invicta, UFC. I'm watching all those fights, men or women.
Awesome. Emily Dacotte, it's been awesome having you on here. Let us know where we can support you and reach out to you if people wanted to be a fan of yours and cheer for you or buy any merch you have or anything. What's your best social media? And if you have a website, feel free to shout it out.
Most active on Instagram, so follow me there and you will be up to date on all things Gordina.
Awesome. Well, that's right. Gordina is your nickname. I like that. And we are going to be cheering for you.